Teacher spots child on the street and says, he reminds her of a student who vanished in 2015 then. Dorothy Miller felt her legs tremble as she watched the boy from a distance. At 67, she had been through many situations in life, but nothing had prepared her for this moment at the open-air market in Brooklyn Heights, New York City. It was when she spotted that familiar little face among the fruit stands that her heart nearly stopped. The boy couldn't have been more than 12, selling homemade sweets on an improvised tray, but it was impossible not to recognize those brown eyes and the unique way he tilted his head when concentrating. He looked exactly like little Ethan, her student who had disappeared without a trace 9 years ago. "My God, it can't be," she murmured to herself, adjusting her reading glasses. Dorothy had dedicated 42 years of her life to teaching at Washington Elementary School. In that time, thousands of children had passed through her hands, but Ethan Parker was special. A shy boy from a humble family who vanished during a school trip to Central Park in 2015. She had never been able to forgive herself for not paying closer attention that fateful day. The boy looked up, and for a moment their eyes met. A shiver ran down Dorothy's spine. It was him, she was sure of it. But how was that possible? "Hey, Mom, want to buy some sweets?" the boy asked in a sweet voice that sounded strange to Dorothy's ears. She stepped closer slowly, trying to control the emotions threatening to spill over. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm Michael, ma'am. Michael Davis." The different name made Dorothy hesitate for a second. Maybe it was just an uncanny resemblance, one of those coincidences life sometimes throws at you. But when the boy smiled, she spotted a small scar on his chin that confirmed her suspicions. "Michael," she repeated, almost whispering. "Do you go to school around here?" Before the boy could answer, an older woman appeared beside him. She must have been around 70, with gray hair tied in a simple bun, wearing a plain blue cotton dress. "Michael, let's go. We've sold enough for today," the woman said in a tone that brooked no argument. Dorothy noticed the nervousness in the woman's voice and how she gripped the boy's arm firmly. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm Dorothy, a retired teacher. This boy reminds me so much of a former student and—" "You must be mistaken," the woman cut in sharply. "Come on, Michael." She hurriedly pulled the boy away, disappearing quickly among the market stalls. Dorothy stood frozen in place, clutching the book she had bought, unable to fully process what had just happened. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Dorothy barely slept. Lying in bed in her small apartment where she had lived alone since retiring, she replayed every detail of the encounter in her mind. The boy's features, the scar on his chin, even the way he held the tray of sweets was identical to how Ethan used to carry his notebooks at school. Ethan Parker had joined her class midway through the 2015 school year. He was a quiet child, almost invisible, always sitting in the back row and rarely participating in group activities. Dorothy remembered trying many times to bring him closer to his classmates, but the boy seemed to carry an invisible weight on his shoulders. Ethan's mother, Jennifer, attended parent-teacher meetings with downcast eyes and bruises poorly hidden under makeup. Dorothy had suspected domestic troubles, but had never been able to get the woman to open up fully about what was happening at home. It was during the outing to Central Park that everything changed. The children were playing near the lake when Dorothy noticed Ethan had disappeared. A desperate search began, involving school staff, other parents, and even firefighters. But Ethan had simply vanished, as if he'd dissolved into thin air. The investigation that followed revealed little. Ethan's mother was equally distraught, and his father, Richard Parker, seemed more concerned with blaming the school than searching for his son. Dorothy always found his reactions strange, but could never prove her suspicions. The next morning, Dorothy returned to the market with a determination she hadn't felt in years. She went to every stall, spoke with vendors, asked about the boy who sold sweets. Most didn't know him well, but an older woman selling spices mentioned she'd seen the boy a few times, always accompanied by the same older woman. "They're not much for talking," the vendor commented, arranging bunches of cilantro at her stall. "The older woman always pays quickly and leaves, but the boy seems polite." Dorothy spent 3 straight days at the market, always in the early morning, hoping to see Michael again. On the 4th day, her persistence paid off. She saw him arriving alone, carrying the same tray of sweets, but this time, there was no sign of the woman who usually accompanied him. She approached slowly, pretending to examine fruit at a nearby stall while discreetly observing the boy. The resemblance was undeniable. Every gesture, every facial expression, even the way he counted coins was identical to her memories of Ethan. "Hi, Michael," she said, stepping closer carefully so as not to startle him. The boy looked up and for a moment seemed to recognize her, but then quickly averted his gaze. "Hi, Mom. Want to buy something?" "Actually, I'd like to talk with you a little," Dorothy said, sitting on a small stool nearby. "You remind me so much of a boy I once knew. His name was Ethan." The reaction was immediate. Michael dropped 2 candies from his tray, his eyes widening in shock. I don't know any Ethan," he stammered, but his voice trembled. Dorothy realized she'd touched a nerve. Gently, she leaned a little closer. "Ethan was my student, a very special boy who loved drawing little houses with 3 chimneys and always shared his snacks with classmates who forgot theirs at home." The boy turned pale and began shaking his head repeatedly. "I'm not Ethan. My name's Michael," he said, standing abruptly. In his hurry to leave, he tripped and spilled the entire tray of sweets onto the ground. Dorothy bent down to help him gather the scattered candies, and that's when she saw it. A small brown leather bracelet had slipped from the boy's wrist and lay on the ground, half hidden beneath a piece of candy. She quickly picked it up. Engraved on the leather were the initials EP, Ethan Parker. Her heart raced. Michael, this bracelet! But when she looked up, the boy had already disappeared into the market crowd, leaving behind the scattered sweets and taking with him Dorothy's certainty that she'd found her lost student. With the bracelet carefully tucked in her purse, Dorothy spent the rest of the morning gathering information about where Michael lived. It was Old Joe, a vendor who'd sold vegetables there for over 20 years, who finally gave her a lead. "Martha, the woman who looks after the boy, lives up in the Upper West Side, in a little yellow house on Maple Street," he said, scratching his grey beard. "She's a private woman, doesn't talk much with anyone, but she always pays promptly for the produce she buys here." Dorothy memorized the address. Martha, that name wasn't unfamiliar. She was sure she'd heard it somewhere before, but couldn't recall where. That afternoon, after much hesitation, Dorothy decided to go to Maple Street. It was a narrow street in the Upper West Side, lined with simple, well-kept houses. The yellow house wasn't hard to find. It was small but had a front garden with neatly tended plants and a hammock stretched across the porch. Dorothy knocked on the door, her heart racing. After a few minutes, the same woman she'd seen at the market opened the door, but this time her face showed clear irritation and suspicion. "What do you want?" Martha asked sharply. "My name is Dorothy Miller. I'm a retired teacher and I'd like to talk about Michael." "There's nothing to talk about. Michael is my grandson and I don't owe anyone an explanation," Martha replied, starting to close the door. "Please," Dorothy put her hand on the door to stop her. "I believe Michael is actually Ethan Parker, a student who disappeared from my school in 2015. Martha's face turned pale. For a moment she seemed about to faint, but then quickly composed herself. "You're out of your mind. My grandson's name is Michael Davis and he was born right here in New York City. Now leave before I call—" "Before you call who?" Dorothy interrupted, sensing her hesitation. "Mrs. Martha, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because I care about a child who might need help." Martha glanced around as if checking if anyone was watching, then reluctantly opened the door a little wider. "Come in quickly," she said. The inside of the house was simple but cozy. Handmade crochet covers draped the sofa arms, and the smell of home-cooked food lingered in the air. What caught Dorothy's attention, however, were the drawings pinned to the kitchen wall, pictures of little houses with 3 chimneys, colored in crayon, exactly the way Ethan used to draw at school. "These drawings," Dorothy began, pointing at the wall. "Michael likes to draw," Martha replied quickly, but her voice lacked conviction. Dorothy took the bracelet from her bag and placed it on the kitchen table. "He dropped this at the market this morning." Martha looked at the bracelet and her hands began to tremble. She sank heavily into a chair, as if her legs could no longer hold her up. "How did you get this bracelet?" she asked, her voice choked. "You see the initials, don't you? E.P. Ethan Parker. Mrs. Martha, please tell me the truth. What happened to Ethan? Where is Jennifer, his mother?" Martha was silent for a long time, staring at the bracelet. When she finally spoke, her voice was a whisper filled with pain. "Jennifer is dead." Dorothy felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Her worst suspicions were confirmed. "How? When?" 3 years ago. Martha wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She couldn't take it anymore. Her heart gave out one night from so much suffering. "And Ethan? What happened the day he disappeared from school?" Martha stood and walked to the window, looking out as if expecting someone to arrive. "Jennifer came to me that day. She was desperate, her face all bruised. She said she couldn't take Richard's abuse anymore, and that he'd threatened to hurt Ethan if she tried to leave him." Dorothy felt tears welling in her eyes. The story Martha told confirmed her darkest suspicions about Ethan's family. "She begged me to take Ethan for a few days, just until she could figure out how to escape. I'd worked with her at the hospital years ago. We were friends. How could I say no?" "But why didn't you get help? Why didn't you tell the authorities the truth?" "Because Richard had connections, people who protected him. Jennifer had tried reporting him before, and it only made the beatings worse. She said the only way to protect Ethan was to make him disappear completely." Dorothy was beginning to understand the magnitude of the tragedy that had unfolded before her eyes 9 years ago. "So, Jennifer planned the disappearance during the school trip. She was waiting for me in the park. When Ethan wandered off from the group to play near the trees, she called him. The boy was confused but obeyed his mother. She handed Ethan to me and disappeared into the crowd. And then? Jennifer managed to leave the city that same day, said she was heading to the Midwest to find work, start a new life, promised to come back for Ethan when she was settled. Dorothy sat in the chair beside Martha, trying to process all the information. But she never returned. In the first few months, she'd call in secret, said she was doing fine, that everything would work out soon. But the calls became fewer, then stopped altogether. I only learned she'd left through a distant cousin who tracked me down 3 years ago. And Ethan, how did he handle all this? At first it was terrible. He cried every night, asked for his mother, wanted to go home. But little by little he adjusted. I changed his name to Michael, and we started a new life. He's a good boy, but he carries sorrows no child should bear. Dorothy looked again at the drawings on the wall. Even after 9 years, Ethan still sketched the same little houses, perhaps dreaming of a home he never truly had. Where is he now? He went to buy bread at the bakery. Should be back any minute. Martha looked at Dorothy pleadingly. Please, don't destroy the life we've built. Ethan. Michael. He's safe here with me. It's all Jennifer wanted. Before Dorothy could answer, they heard the key turn in the lock. Ethan walked in carrying a bag of bread, but froze when he saw Dorothy sitting in the kitchen. Grandma Martha, why is she here? He asked, his voice trembling. Martha stood and went to the boy, placing her hands protectively on his shoulders. Michael, this is Mrs. Dorothy. She knew your mother a long time ago. Ethan looked straight at Dorothy, and for the first time she saw in those brown eyes not just the memory of the student she'd lost, but also the pain of a child who'd endured traumas no adult should face. You knew my mother? He asked, his voice a mix of hope and fear. Dorothy felt she was facing one of the most important moments of her life. Every word she said now could forever change this child's fate. Yes, sweetheart, I was your teacher, remember? At Washington Elementary. You sat in the back row and loved drawing little houses. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, Dorothy saw the 9-year-old boy who'd vanished that day in the park. I remember you, Mrs. Dorothy. You always kept cookies in your drawer for anyone who forgot their snack. That's right, my love. Chocolate chip, your favorite. Ethan dropped the bread bag and ran into Dorothy's arms, and she held him tight. For a few minutes, the three stood in silence, each processing the emotions of this unexpected reunion. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, Take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing. When Ethan pulled away, Dorothy could see he'd grown, but his eyes still held the same sweetness that had won her over years ago. "Why did you change your name, sweetheart?" Ethan glanced at Martha, who gave a nod of approval. Grandma Martha said Ethan had to stay asleep for a while so Michael could grow up safe. She said my mother wanted it that way. The simplicity with which the child explained the transformation of his identity broke Dorothy's heart. How could a young mind fully grasp the complexity of the situation he had been placed in? "And do you like being Michael?" "Sometimes, but I miss being Ethan too. Michael doesn't remember school, or my friends, or you. Only Ethan remembers those good things." Dorothy exchanged a knowing glance with Martha. The child had developed his own way of coping with the trauma, splitting his identity between the painful past and the safety of the present. "Michael, would you like me to visit you sometimes? I could help with your studies, talk about drawings." The boy's eyes lit up, but then he glanced worriedly at Martha. "Can I, Grandma? Teacher Dorothy seems nice." Martha hesitated. Dorothy could see the older woman torn between wanting to give the boy what he needed and the fear of exposing the secret she had kept for so many years. "Mrs. Martha," Dorothy said gently, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I came because I care about Ethan, about Michael. For 9 years I carried the guilt of losing a student. Now that I've found him, I just want to help. But what if someone finds out? What if Richard doesn't need to know. I can come as a neighbor, a family friend. No one has to know about our past connection." Martha sat back down, carefully considering Dorothy's words. "Michael isn't going to school," she admitted finally. "I'm afraid to enroll him, to have to show documents, answer questions. He's learning with me at home, but I know it's not enough." Dorothy saw a real opportunity to help. "I could tutor him. I have all the teaching materials at home, 40 years of experience in elementary education, and I'd be discreet. No one would have to know." Michael tugged at Martha's skirt, looking up at her with pleading eyes. "Please, Grandma, I want to learn more." Martha looked at her grandson, then at Dorothy, and finally let out a heavy sigh. "All right, but with conditions. You come here on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. If anyone asks, you're my friend from church helping me teach Michael. And if anything seems dangerous, if someone starts getting suspicious, you stop coming immediately." Dorothy agreed to all the conditions. For the first time in 9 years, she felt she could do something to make up for what she saw as her failure as a teacher. "Michael, I'll bring some books next Tuesday. What's your favorite subject?" "I like history. Grandma Martha tells old stories about our family, about how our grandparents came from the countryside, and I like English too." "Great. We'll focus on those subjects then." Before leaving, Dorothy took a closer look at the house. It was simple, but filled with love in every detail. Martha's crochet work, Michael's drawings on the wall, the smell of home-cooked meals that spoke of shared affection. "Mrs. Martha, can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead." "How did you meet Jennifer?" Martha settled into her chair, as if preparing to tell a long story. "I worked as a cleaning assistant at Mercy General Hospital. Jennifer was a nursing student. She was hardworking, studious, but always very quiet. One day, I found her crying in the bathroom, her face bruised. I offered to help, but she said she'd fallen off her bike." Dorothy listened intently, piecing the story together. "Later, I found out she was married to a difficult man. The marks on her face became more frequent, but she never admitted it was abuse. When Ethan was born, she stopped studying. Richard wouldn't let her work outside the home. And you kept in touch. Every now and then, she'd show up at the hospital with some excuse just to talk. I could tell she was getting thinner, sadder. But what could I do? She never asked for help directly." Michael had sat on the floor, playing with some wooden toy cars, but Dorothy noticed he was listening to the conversation. "Until the day she showed up desperate, holding Ethan's hand, saying she needed my help." "And you didn't hesitate?" "How could I? She was a mother trying to save her son, and Ethan was so tiny, so scared. In the first few days, he barely spoke, Just drew those little houses and asked when his mom was coming back. Dorothy looked at Michael, who had stopped playing and was now openly listening. Michael, do you remember how you felt when you first got here? The boy thought for a moment before answering. I remember being scared. Grandma Martha was nice, but I didn't know why my mom left without me. She said she'd be back soon, but it took forever. And when did you realize she wasn't coming back? I think when we stopped waiting for her to call. At first, Grandma would say Mom called while I was asleep. Then she stopped saying that. The maturity with which Michael spoke about his own story struck Dorothy. It was as if the child had been forced to grow emotionally far beyond his years. Do you miss her? I do. But I'm also scared to miss her. Grandma Martha takes good care of me, and I don't want to hurt her by thinking about my mom. Martha knelt beside Michael and hugged him. Sweetheart, you can miss your mom whenever you want. That doesn't hurt me. She was your mother and always will be, even if she's not here. Dorothy felt a wave of emotion watching the scene. Martha hadn't just saved Michael physically, she was also trying to protect his emotional well-being with such wisdom and love. Mrs. Martha, may I make a suggestion? Of course. I think it would be good if Michael could talk more about his memories, about how he feels about everything that happened. During our lessons, if he's comfortable, we could include that as part of his learning. How so? Have him write little stories about his memories. Draw not just houses, but maybe people who matter to him. It might help him process his experiences better. Michael seemed interested. Can I draw you too, Miss Dorothy? Of course, sweetheart. You can draw me as Miss Dorothy or Aunt Dorothy, whatever you like. Can I draw you as both at the same time? Michael's question made Dorothy pause. The child had learned that a person could have different identities depending on the situation, just as he himself was both Ethan and Michael. You sure can. Sometimes the same person can be many different things to us, right? Like me. I'm Ethan, with you and Michael with Grandma Martha, but I'm still me with both. The wisdom in Michael's words touched Dorothy deeply. She realized this child had developed an understanding of identity and relationships that many adults never reach. When Dorothy finally said goodbye that day, promising to return the following Tuesday with teaching materials, she felt a mix of hope and responsibility. She had found Ethan, but now she needed to help Michael build a future without destroying the present Martha had so carefully built. Walking home, Dorothy replayed the events of the past few days in her mind. 9 years searching for answers about Ethan's disappearance, carrying the guilt of having failed as a teacher, and now she discovered that Jennifer had done the only thing she believed could save her son. That night, Dorothy called her daughter Karen, who lived in Chicago. Mom, you sound different. Did something happen? Karen asked after a few minutes of conversation. Remember the student who disappeared during the school field trip years ago? Ethan Parker. Of course I remember. You were depressed for months, thinking it was your fault. I found him, Karen. There was silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean, Mom? Found him where? Dorothy gave her daughter a shortened version of the story, leaving out some of the more sensitive details about Michael's family situation. Mom, are you sure it's the same child? It could just be a resemblance. I'm sure, Karen. And he recognized me, too. He even remembers the cookies I kept in my desk drawer. So what are you going to do? I'm going to help with his studies. The woman taking care of him is a good person, but he needs a formal education. Mom, be careful. You don't know the whole story. It might be more complicated than it seems. Dorothy knew her daughter was right, but she also knew she couldn't just turn her back on Michael now that she'd found him. I'll be careful, sweetheart, but I have to do this. For 9 years, I've felt incomplete, like I lost an important part of who I am as a teacher. Now I have a chance to help. Okay, Mom. But if anything strange happens, you call me right away, understood? Understood. The following Tuesday, Dorothy arrived at Martha's house carrying a bag full of textbooks, notebooks, and colored pencils. Michael was waiting for her on the porch, visibly excited. I brought materials for several subjects, Dorothy said, laying everything out on the kitchen table. History, English, math, science, and even geography. Michael flipped through the books with interest, stopping at the pages with colorful illustrations. Can I take some to my room to look at later? Of course, they're yours now. Martha watched the interaction between the two with a mix of joy and worry. Dorothy noticed her hesitation. Mrs. Martha, would you like to join the lessons too? Sometimes it helps to have family support in learning. I only studied up to 4th grade, Martha said, somewhat embarrassed. That's okay. You can learn alongside Michael. Education has no age limit. The idea seemed to please both Michael and Martha. During the first lesson, Dorothy discreetly assessed Michael's level of knowledge. He could read and write reasonably well for his age, but had significant gaps in math and science. What impressed Dorothy the most was his eagerness to learn. Michael, I'm going to give you a writing exercise. I want you to write about a special day in your life. It can be any day, happy or sad, that was important to you. Michael picked up the pencil and thought for a few minutes before starting to write. Dorothy took the opportunity to speak quietly with Martha. How has he been since our talk last week? Different, more talkative, more curious about the past. Yesterday he asked if I knew his mother's parents' names. And did you know? I did. Jennifer had a difficult relationship with her family too. Her father was very strict, never approved of her marriage to Richard, but he also never offered help when she needed it. Do they know about Michael? No. Jennifer said they lived far away in rural Pennsylvania. They barely kept in touch after the wedding. Michael interrupted the conversation. Miss Dorothy, I'm done. Dorothy took the paper and read aloud. The special day I chose was when I arrived at Grandma Martha's house. I was scared because my mother had left, and I didn't know if she was coming back. Grandma gave me milk and cookies and said I could sleep in her bed until I got used to it. At night, she told me stories until I fell asleep. It was special because it was the day I gained a new family. Dorothy felt her eyes well up. Michael's ability to find positives even in a traumatic situation showed impressive resilience. That's a very beautiful piece, Michael. You expressed your feelings so well. Can I write about other days too? Of course. Next class, I want you to write about a place you'd like to visit. The Tuesday and Thursday classes quickly became the highlight of the week for both Michael and Dorothy. Martha, initially shy, began participating more actively, asking questions and even helping Michael with the exercises. It was during the 4th week of classes that Michael asked a question that caught Dorothy off guard. Miss Dorothy, do you think my dad is looking for me? Dorothy exchanged a quick glance with Martha before answering. Why do you ask that, sweetheart? Because sometimes I have nightmares. In the dream, he shows up at the door and yells at Grandma Martha. I wake up scared. Martha stepped closer and stroked the boy's hair. Michael, you're safe here. No one will hurt you. But what if he finds out where I am? Dorothy realized she needed to address Michael's fears honestly without making his anxiety worse. Michael, sometimes when we go through hard times, our minds worry about things that may never happen. Do you remember how you felt about your dad? Michael looked down and stayed quiet for a few minutes. I was scared of him. He yelled at my mom a lot. Once, she cried all night after he left. And do you remember the last time you saw him? I do. It was the day before I came to live with Grandma Martha. He argued with my mom in the kitchen. I was in my room, but I could hear them. Dorothy knew she was treading carefully, but she felt Michael needed to talk about these memories to process them. What did you hear? He said if my mom tried to leave, he'd do something bad to her. My mom cried and said she just wanted to protect me. Martha gently stepped in. Michael, your mother brought you here to keep you safe. And all these years you've been safe, haven't you? Yes, Grandma. Then you can trust that you'll stay safe. Dorothy admired how Martha handled Michael's fears, always offering reassurance without denying the reality of what they'd faced. Michael, Dorothy said, how about we try something different? I'll give you paper and crayons to draw your feelings. It doesn't have to be a specific person or thing, just shapes, colors, whatever represents how you feel. Michael liked the idea. He spent nearly an hour drawing, focused and quiet. The result was a picture with two distinct sides, one with dark, jagged shapes, the other with soft, warm-colored curves. Can you tell me about your drawing? This side, he pointed to the dark shapes, is the bad feelings. Fear, sadness, missing my mom. This side, he pointed to the light shapes, is the good feelings. Grandma Martha's love, happiness learning from you, feeling safe at home. And which side is bigger? Michael studied the drawing carefully. The good side is getting bigger. At first it was the other way, but now the good feelings are growing. Dorothy smiled. That was one of the most mature and hopeful answers she'd ever heard from a child. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing, after 2 months of regular classes, Dorothy began noticing significant changes in Michael. He was more confident, asked more questions, and his writing showed a growing understanding of his own experiences. Martha also seemed calmer, less tense with each of Dorothy's visits. It was on a rainy Thursday that everything changed. Dorothy was explaining about US states when she heard loud banging on the front door. Martha paled instantly. "Michael, go to your room," she said softly but firmly. "But Grandma." "Now, Michael." The boy obeyed quickly. Dorothy saw terror in Martha's eyes. "Mrs. Martha, what's happening?" "I don't know. No one knocks on my door like that." The banging repeated, more insistent. "Martha, open this door. I know you're in there." A man's voice, rough and commanding. Dorothy felt a chill down her spine. "It's him," Martha whispered, trembling. "It's Richard." Dorothy felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. After 9 years, Michael's biological father had found their hiding place. How could he have found out? "I don't know. We've always been so careful." "Martha, I know my son's in there. Open this door before I break it down." Dorothy looked around, trying to think fast. Through the kitchen window, she saw a tall, broad-shouldered man at the front gate. He wore expensive clothes and drove a luxury car. "Mrs. Martha, is there a back way out?" "There is, but Michael's in his room. I can't leave him." "I'll get Michael. You go to the back exit and wait for us there." Dorothy hurried down the hall but was stopped by Martha. "No. If he breaks in and doesn't find me here, he'll suspect we fled. I'll open the door and talk to him." "Martha, last time I'm asking, open this door." "What about Michael?" "Take Michael out the back. There's an abandoned house 3 blocks from here on Oak Avenue. Wait for me there." Dorothy wanted to protest, but there was no time. Martha was right. Someone had to distract Richard while Michael escaped. "Mrs. Martha, I can't leave you alone with him. Dorothy, you're the only one I trust with Michael. If anything happens to me, promise you'll protect him." Before Dorothy could answer, they heard wood splintering. Richard had broken down the front door. "Where's my son, Martha?" Dorothy ran to Michael's room, where he was hiding under the bed, shaking with fear. "Michael, come with me, quick and quiet." "What about Grandma Martha? She'll meet us later. Let's go now." Dorothy took Michael's hand and they slipped silently out the back. From the kitchen they could hear Richard's raised voice arguing with Martha. 9 years, Martha. 9 years I've looked for him. You think you can hide my son from me forever?" "Richard, the boy's fine. He's safe. He has a good life. He's my son. My blood. You have no right to keep him." Dorothy and Michael made it out the back undetected. Once on the street, Dorothy scooped Michael up and hurried in the direction Martha had mentioned. "Miss Dorothy, why didn't Grandma come with us?" "She'll meet us, sweetheart. Trust me." Michael nodded, but Dorothy could feel him trembling. The abandoned house Martha had mentioned stood on a quiet street with several empty homes. Dorothy found an open gate and entered with Michael, searching for a place to hide and wait. "Michael, let's play a little game, okay? We'll stay very quiet here until Grandma Martha arrives." "That man was my father, wasn't he?" Dorothy hesitated. Michael deserved the truth, but it was a heavy truth for a child to carry. "Yes, sweetheart, he was." "Why was he yelling at Grandma?" Because he wants you to live with him." "I don't want to live with him. I want to stay with Grandma Martha and you." Dorothy held Michael tighter. "I know, my love, and we'll find a way to work this out." They hid in the abandoned house for nearly 2 hours. Dorothy grew increasingly worried about Martha's delay. Michael had fallen asleep in her arms, exhausted from the tension of the day. As the sun began to set, Dorothy heard footsteps approaching the house. Her heart raced, but she soon recognized Martha's voice calling softly. "Dorothy? Michael? Are you there? Dorothy stepped out of hiding, still holding the sleeping Michael. Mrs. Martha, thank God, what happened? How did you get away from him? Martha looked as if she'd aged 10 years in just a few hours. Her hair was disheveled, and dried tears streaked her face. I had to make a deal with him. Dorothy's stomach twisted. What kind of deal? He said he's taking Michael away, that he has rights as a father, and that he's already wasted too much time. And you agreed. I had no choice, Dorothy. He said if I didn't hand Michael over willingly, he'd take legal action. He claims he has lawyers, that he can prove I kidnapped a child. Dorothy sat on a stone in the abandoned house's garden, still cradling Michael. But we know the truth. We know Jennifer asked you to take care of him. And how do we prove that? Jennifer is gone. We have no papers, no witnesses. To the world, Michael disappeared in 2015 and has now been found. How much time did he give us? Until noon tomorrow. He said he'll come back and expects Michael to be ready to leave. Dorothy felt like she was trapped in a nightmare. After finding Ethan and starting to help him as Michael, she now risked losing him again, this time to someone who might be dangerous for him. Mrs. Martha, we can't just give Michael to him, not after everything that's happened. Then what do you suggest we do? Run away? Where? Richard has resources, connections. He'll find us anywhere. Michael stirred in Dorothy's arms and slowly opened his eyes. Grandma Martha, are you okay? He asked sleepily. I'm fine, my boy. Just a little tired. Can we go home? Martha and Dorothy exchanged a pained glance. How could they explain to a child that by tomorrow he might not have a home anymore? Michael, Dorothy said gently, tomorrow might be a different kind of day for you. Your father wants to get to know you better. Michael straightened in her arms, now fully awake. I don't want to go with him. I want to stay with you. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes grown-ups make decisions that kids don't understand. Like when my mom brought me to Grandma Martha. Michael's question made Dorothy realize he was connecting this situation to his earlier separation. Something like that, yes. Your mom brought you to Grandma Martha because she wanted to keep you safe. Now your father wants to take you because he feels he has the right to. What do you think is best, Miss Dorothy? Dorothy felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Michael was asking for her opinion on a situation with no easy answers. I think you should stay where you feel safe and loved. And you feel safe with Grandma Martha, don't you? I do, but what if my dad is nice now? What if he's changed? The maturity of Michael's question struck Dorothy once again. Even at 12 years old, he was trying to consider every possibility of the situation. People can change, Michael, but it's also important that you feel comfortable with whatever decision is made. Martha, who had stayed quiet during the conversation, finally spoke. Michael, what would you like to happen? I'd like to meet my father, but without having to go live with him. I'd like to keep living with you and having classes with Miss Dorothy. It was a simple and reasonable request, but one that seemed impossible given the circumstances. Let's go back home, said Martha. We'll make dinner and think about how to handle this situation. Walking back to the house, Dorothy glanced around carefully, checking if they were being followed. The street seemed quiet, but she couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Back at Martha's house, Dorothy helped prepare a simple dinner while Michael tidied up the books that had been scattered on the table during Richard's sudden arrival. Mrs. Martha, Dorothy said as she chopped vegetables, can I make a suggestion? Of course. What if we talk to Richard tomorrow, not to hand Michael over, but to try negotiating an arrangement? What kind of arrangement? Supervised visits. He could get to know Michael gradually, build a relationship, but without taking the boy away from where he feels safe. Martha stopped stirring the pot and looked at Dorothy. Do you think he'd agree to that? We won't know unless we try, and Michael himself said he'd like to meet his father, but without having to go live with him. And if he refuses, then we'll figure out another way. But at least we'll have tried talking first before taking drastic measures. Michael, who had been listening from the living room, walked into the kitchen. Miss Dorothy, would you stay with me if I had to talk to my dad? If you want me to, and if Grandma Martha agrees, of course I will. And you too, Grandma. Of course, my boy, I won't leave you alone. That night, Dorothy decided to sleep at Martha's house on the living room couch. None of the three slept well, each processing the day's events and tomorrow's uncertainties in their own way. Around 5 in the morning, Dorothy woke to noises in the kitchen. She found Michael sitting at the table, drawing. "You're up early, sweetheart." "I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about a lot of things." Dorothy sat beside him and looked at the drawing. It was different from the ones Michael usually made. Instead of little houses with 3 chimneys, he had drawn people holding hands in a circle. "Who are these people in the drawing?" "It's me, you, Grandma Martha, and my dad. I thought maybe we could be a big family instead of a small one." Dorothy felt her eyes fill with tears. Michael's ability to imagine positive solutions even in tough situations was touching. "It's a beautiful drawing, Michael. Let's hope it's possible." "Miss Dorothy, do you think my dad will think I'm cool?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Grandma Martha always says I'm a good boy. But what if my dad doesn't like me? What if he wants a different son?" Dorothy took Michael's hands in hers. "Michael, you're a wonderful child. Any father would be proud to have a son like you. Smart, kind, brave. If your dad can't see that, that's his problem, not yours. What if he really tries to take me away from you? Then we'll fight to stop that. Grandma Martha and I will do everything we can to protect you." Martha appeared in the kitchen, still in her robe. "You two are up awfully early." "Michael couldn't sleep," Dorothy explained. "He was drawing and talking about today's meeting." Martha poured herself some coffee and joined the two at the table. "Michael, no matter what happens today, I want you to know that these years with you have been the best of my life. You gave me purpose, a reason to wake up happy every day." "Grandma, you're not getting rid of me that easy," Michael replied with a smile that tried to be brave. "I hope not, my grandson." At 10 in the morning, Dorothy suggested Michael take a bath and put on his nicest clothes for the meeting with his father. "He'll be here by noon," Martha said, glancing nervously at the clock. "Let's welcome him with dignity," Dorothy replied. "Michael needs to see we're not afraid, that we're people of worth who've taken good care of him all these years." By 11:30, the three of them were in the living room, waiting. Michael had chosen a blue shirt Martha had sewn for him and clean jeans. Martha wore her Sunday dress, and Dorothy had brought out her professional clothes from when she was still the school principal. When the knocks finally came, this time more polite than the day before, all three stood up. Martha went to the door and opened it. Richard Parker looked nothing like the man who had broken in the day before. He wore a dark suit, his hair neatly trimmed, and his expression was more controlled. But Dorothy could see the tension in his eyes. "Martha," he said, stepping inside. "Michael." Michael half hid behind Dorothy, watching his father with curiosity mixed with fear. "And you are?" Richard asked, looking at Dorothy. "I'm Dorothy Miller, retired teacher and family friend." "Michael's teacher?" "That's right." Richard studied Dorothy for a few seconds before turning his attention back to Michael. "You've grown so much, son. You're a young man now." Michael didn't answer, but kept watching his father closely. "Michael," Martha said gently, "your father came to talk to you." "Hi," Michael said timidly. Richard knelt to be at Michael's eye level. "Son, I know you don't remember much about me. You were so little when we were separated, but I never stopped looking for you." "Why did you yell at Grandma Martha yesterday?" Michael asked bluntly. The question caught Richard off guard. He looked at Martha, then at Dorothy before answering. "Because I was angry. I spent 9 years thinking something terrible had happened to you. When I found out where you were, I got too emotional." "But nothing terrible happened to me," Michael said. "Grandma Martha took good care of me. I know that now, son, and I'm grateful to her for it. But now I want you to come live with me. I have a big house. I can give you everything you need." Michael looked at Martha and Dorothy before answering. "I like my life here. I have Grandma Martha, Ms. Dorothy teaches me cool things. I have my drawings, my books. You can have all that with me too, and so much more. But I won't have Grandma Martha and Ms. Dorothy." Richard sighed, realizing the conversation wasn't going the way he'd hoped. "Michael, I'm your father. I have rights and responsibilities toward you." Mr. Parker, Dorothy interrupted. May I make a suggestion? Go ahead. Michael has expressed interest in getting to know you better, but he's afraid of leaving the people who've cared for him all these years. What if we start with regular visits? You could spend time with him, build a relationship, and gradually he might feel more comfortable with the idea of a bigger change. Richard stood and walked to the window, considering the proposal. How long? As long as it takes. Maybe a few months, maybe more. Michael deserves to choose his own pace. And if I don't want to wait? If I want to exercise my rights as a father now? It was Martha who answered. Richard, you can force Michael to go with you, but make no mistake, you won't win his heart that way. And without his heart, you won't truly have your son back. Michael stepped closer to his father, who still stood by the window. Dad, do you really want me to live with you? Or do you just want to win against Grandma Martha? The question hit Richard like a punch to the gut. He knelt before his son again, this time with tears in his eyes. Michael, I want you back because I've spent 9 years with a hole in my chest. Every day I thought about you, wondering if you were okay, if you were safe, if you were happy. When your mother took you away. My mom didn't take me away, Michael interrupted. She saved me. The silence that followed was heavy. Richard looked at Martha, then at Dorothy, as if trying to grasp what Michael had just said. What do you mean she saved you? She brought me to Grandma Martha so I'd be safe, away from the fights, the yelling, the fear. Richard seemed to shrink. For the first time since he'd arrived, Dorothy saw not the domineering man who had barged in, but someone facing painful truths about himself. Michael, Things were different back then. I was dealing with problems, work pressures. I didn't know how to handle everything. And now you do? Michael asked with the blunt honesty of a child. I'm trying to learn. I went to therapy, changed a lot in my life, but I know that doesn't erase what happened before. Dorothy sensed this was a pivotal moment. Richard was being confronted with the consequences of his past actions through the innocent eyes of his own son. Mr. Richard, she said, what do you really want? Do you want to be Michael's father, or do you just want to prove you have rights over him? Richard closed his eyes briefly, as if fighting an inner battle. I want to be his father. I want to know him, understand who he's become, help him grow. But I'm afraid it's too late. It's not too late, Michael said, but you can't start by yelling at the people who take care of me. You're right, son. I'm sorry for scaring you all yesterday. I was desperate. Dorothy felt the tone of the conversation had shifted. Richard seemed genuinely willing to face his mistakes and change his approach. Michael, she said, what do you think about giving your dad a chance to get to know you better? He could come here a few times a week. You could talk. Maybe he could take you out sometimes. Michael looked at Martha for approval. What do you think, Grandma? I think it's worth trying, my boy. But slowly, on your terms. Michael turned back to his father. Do you promise you won't yell at Grandma Martha or Ms. Dorothy again? I promise. And do you promise you won't make me do anything I don't want to? I promise. Then you can visit me. But I'm still living here. Richard nodded, visibly moved. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for giving me this chance. Dorothy suggested the first official visit happen the following Saturday for 2 hours at Martha's house. Richard agreed to every condition. After he left, Michael flopped onto the couch with a deep sigh. That was easier than I thought. How so, sweetheart? Dorothy asked. He seemed more sad than angry. And when he cried, he looked like a real person, not a monster. Michael's observation once again showed his uncanny ability to read complex emotions with striking clarity. You were very brave, Michael, Martha said. You spoke your mind without being disrespectful. I learned from both of you. Teacher Dorothy always says we can tell the truth without hurting others. In the days that followed, Dorothy continued with regular lessons, but now included conversations about how Michael was feeling regarding the upcoming visits with his father. During Richard's first official visit, Dorothy decided to stay present as an observer and mediator if needed. Richard arrived at the agreed time, bringing a gift for Michael, a set of professional colored pencils. "Martha told me you like to draw," he explained, handing over the gift. Michael accepted it politely and showed his father some of his drawings. Richard took genuine interest, asking about the techniques Michael used and the meanings behind each image. "This one is different from the others," Richard observed, pointing to a drawing where Michael had depicted people holding hands in a circle. "I drew this last week. It's the people I want in my family." "And who are they?" "Grandma Martha, Teacher Dorothy, you, and me." Richard fell silent for a few minutes, studying the drawing. You included me even before really knowing me." "I included you because you're my father, but I'll only hold your hand for real when I trust you." Michael's honesty deeply moved Richard. Dorothy could see he was genuinely trying to understand his son and build a relationship based on trust, not authority. Over the following weeks, the visits became more natural and relaxed. Richard started arriving early to help Martha with small household tasks. He also began joining Dorothy's lessons, discovering how much Michael had progressed academically. "He's very advanced for his age," Richard remarked, after observing a math lesson. "You've done an incredible job with his education." "Michael has a thirst for learning," Dorothy replied. "He just needed opportunities. And I want to make sure he keeps getting them. I've been thinking, how about enrolling him in a private school? I can pay for an excellent education." Michael, who was working on exercises at a nearby table, looked up. "Can I still have lessons with Teacher Dorothy too?" "Of course," Richard answered. "Lessons with Teacher Dorothy can complement regular school." It was then that Dorothy noticed a significant shift in the family dynamic. Richard was no longer trying to replace the people who had cared for Michael, but was joining them in raising and protecting him. After 2 months of regular visits, Michael made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I think I'm ready to spend a weekend at my dad's house." Martha and Dorothy exchanged surprised glances. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" Martha asked. "Yes, but I want you to take me there and pick me up, and I want to be sure I can come home whenever I want." "Of course," Richard said. "You can come back any time. And if you'd like, your mothers can call to check on you." The way Richard referred to Martha and Dorothy as Michael's mothers showed he understood their importance in the boy's life. The first weekend at Richard's house was a success. Michael returned excited, talking about the room his father had prepared for him, the new books he'd received, and the park they'd visited. "Dad made pancakes for breakfast," Michael told Martha. "They weren't as good as yours, but he really tried." Dorothy noticed Michael was naturally starting to call Richard my dad instead of just him or Richard. Gradually, weekends at Richard's became regular, but Michael always returned to Martha's home during the week. The routine of lessons with Dorothy continued, now with Richard often present. It was during one of these family gatherings that Dorothy suggested something she'd been thinking about for weeks. "Michael, how about we organize a little birthday party for you? Your birthday was in April, but back then we were all still getting to know each other better." "Can I invite whoever I want?" "Of course." "Then I want the 3 of you, and maybe some vendors from the market who are nice to me." Michael's belated birthday party became a milestone in the history of the unconventional family they had formed. Richard helped with the costs, Martha cooked the boys' favorite dishes, and Dorothy organized games and activities. During the party, Dorothy watched Michael interacting naturally with everyone there. He had managed to blend the different parts of his life in a way that even impressed the adults around him. "Miss Dorothy," Michael said, approaching her during the party, "thank you for finding me at the market. Thank you for letting me be part of your life, sweetheart. You were always part of it. It just took us a while to find each other again." The simplicity and depth of Michael's words made Dorothy realize that their meeting at the market hadn't been a coincidence, but the result of a mutual search that had lasted 9 years. A few months later, in a conversation with Richard and Martha, Dorothy suggested it was time for Michael to return to a regular school. "He's academically ready," she argued, "and he needs social interaction with other kids his age." "But what if someone finds out about his past?" Martha worried. "Michael doesn't have to hide his past," Richard said. "He has a unique story, but it's not a story of shame. It's a story of survival, of love, of people who came together to protect a child. Dorothy was impressed by the growth in Richard's perspective. He had come to understand that Michael's experience, though traumatic, had also given him unique emotional strength. Michael's school registration was done under his real name, Ethan Michael Parker Davis, a combination that honored both his original identity and the one he had built with Martha. On the first day of school, Dorothy and Martha walked Michael to Washington Elementary. Richard wanted to go too, but they decided it was best not to overwhelm the boy with too much attention on his first day. "I'm nervous," Michael admitted at the school entrance. "That's normal," Dorothy said. "But remember, you've been through much harder things than a new school." "What if the other kids don't like me?" "Impossible," Martha said. "You're kind, smart, and funny. You'll make friends fast." Michael walked into school carrying a new backpack Richard had bought him, but he also brought a small notebook where he'd pasted photos of his unconventional family, Martha, Dorothy, and Richard, all together at his birthday party. When Michael came out at the end of his first day, he was smiling. "How was it, sweetheart?" Dorothy asked, who had gone to pick him up. "It was cool. The teacher is nice, and there's a boy in my class who likes to draw too. We showed each other our drawings. And no one asked any weird questions? One boy asked why I have two names. I told him Ethan is my family name, and Michael is my special name. He thought it was cool and said he wants two names too." Dorothy laughed at how simply Michael had explained his complicated situation. In the months that followed, Michael's life settled into a happy, healthy routine. School during the week, extra lessons with Dorothy on Tuesdays and Thursdays, weekends alternating between Martha's and Richard's homes, and regular family dinners where they all gathered together. At one of these family gatherings, Michael made an announcement that deeply moved everyone present. "I have something to tell you all." The three adults paid close attention. "At school, the teacher asked us to write an essay about our family. I wrote about the three of you and explained how each of you saved me in different ways." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" asked Martha. "Grandma Martha saved me from danger, Teacher Dorothy saved me from ignorance, and Dad is saving me from the fear of not having a real father." Dorothy felt tears streaming down her face. Michael's ability to articulate such complex feelings so clearly and generously was a testament to human resilience and the transformative power of love. "Can I read the essay?" she asked. Michael ran to his room and brought back his school notebook. In a clear voice, he read, "My family is different from other families, but it's perfect for me. I have a grandma who isn't my blood relative, but raised me as if I were the most important grandson in the world. I have a teacher who isn't just my teacher, but teaches me about life and makes me feel smart. And I have a dad who's learning to be a father alongside me. Some people might think it's strange to have a family where the parents don't live together and the grandma isn't a blood relative. But I think what matters in a family isn't the house you live in or the blood in your veins. What matters is that the people love you, protect you, teach you, and help you grow. My birth mother isn't here anymore, but she gave me the greatest gift a mother could give. She placed me in the hands of people who love me. So when I think of her, I don't feel sadness, I feel gratitude. My family has taught me that love has no limits and that a child can be happy in many different ways. I'm Ethan to those who knew me in the past, Michael to those who love me now, and I'll be whoever I want to be in the future. That's only possible because I have three people who believe in me. When I grow up, I want a family just like mine, a family that chooses to love, protects those in need, and believes every child deserves to be happy." When Michael finished reading, the three adults were openly crying. Martha pulled him into a tight hug, followed by Dorothy and Richard. "Michael," said Richard, his voice choked up, "thank you for giving me the chance to learn how to be your father. Thank you for forgiving my mistakes and letting me be part of this amazing family." "Thank you for being patient with me," Michael replied, "and for teaching me that family is who chooses to stay, not who's obligated to stay." Dorothy realized that moment marked the end of a journey that had begun 9 years earlier, in a classroom when she had failed to protect a student. Now, she had not only found Ethan again, but also helped raise Michael and been part of creating a family that defied all conventions, yet thrived on genuine love. That night, after Michael fell asleep, the three adults stayed talking in Martha's living room. "Dorothy," said Richard, "I know nothing I say can erase the mistakes I made in the past, but I want you to know I'll always be grateful you found Michael and insisted on being part of his life." "Richard, we all make mistakes. What matters is our willingness to acknowledge them and change. You've proven change is possible, and Michael sees that." "Martha," Richard continued, "you saved my son when I didn't even know he needed saving. I'll never be able to repay you." "I don't want repayment," Martha replied. "Michael gave meaning to my life. I'm the one who should thank Jennifer for trusting him to me." Dorothy looked at them both and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Against all odds, they had managed to create a loving, functional family for Michael. "Have you noticed," she said, "that Michael never asks about what will happen in the future? He's learned to live fully in the present, trusting that the future will take care of itself." "That's a lesson we adults should learn," remarked Martha. "We already have," said Richard. "Michael taught us that." 6 months later, on a Saturday morning, Michael made an unexpected request. "I want to visit my mother's grave." The three adults exchanged glances, surprised by his initiative. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" Martha asked. "Yes. I want to bring her flowers and tell her about our family. I think she'd be happy to know everything worked out." The visit to the cemetery was emotional for everyone. Michael had prepared a small bouquet from Martha's garden and a letter he'd written to his mother. Standing before Jennifer's simple grave, he read his letter aloud. "Hi, Mum. I know you can't answer, but I want to tell you how I'm doing. You made the right choice leaving me with Grandma Martha. She took care of me like I was the child she never had. She taught me to cook, to be polite, to be brave when I need to be. I also got a teacher named Dorothy who teaches me not just school subjects, but about life too. She helped me understand I don't have to be ashamed of our story. And my dad, our Richard, he's changed a lot. Now he's someone I can call Dad without being afraid. He's learning to love me the right way. Mom, we made a strange but beautiful family, and it all started with your courage to save me. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for giving me the chance to be happy. I love and miss you, but I'm not sad anymore. Because I know you did everything out of love. Your son, Ethan Michael." After the cemetery visit, the family stopped at a restaurant for lunch. Michael seemed lighter, as if he'd closed an important chapter in his life. "How do you feel?" Dorothy asked. "Good. I think it was important to say thank you to her, and now I can keep living without carrying that weight in my heart." Richard looked at his son with admiration. "Michael, you're wiser than most adults I know." "I learned from smart people," Michael replied, smiling at the three of them. A year after their first meeting at the market, Dorothy, Martha, Michael, and Richard had settled into a solid, happy family routine. Michael was excelling in school, had friends, practiced judo, an activity Richard had suggested to help build his confidence, and still drew his little houses with 3 chimneys, now with 4 figures at the door. One Thursday evening, during one of Dorothy's lessons, Michael asked a question that caught her off guard. "Miss Dorothy, do you have children? I have a daughter, Karen. She lives in Chicago. Does she know about me?" "Yes. I told her everything. She said she'd love to meet you. I'd like that too. Can I consider her my sister?" Dorothy laughed. "If she agrees, of course you can. So our family's getting even bigger. It seems so, sweetheart." Michael paused the math exercises he was working on. "Miss Dorothy, can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead." "Why didn't you ever remarry after your husband passed?" Dorothy was surprised by the direct question, but answered honestly. "I think I devoted myself so much to my students all these years that there wasn't much time left for anything else." "And now? Would you like to have someone special?" "Why do you ask, Michael?" "Because you deserve someone to take care of you too. You're always taking care of everyone else." Michael's concern for Dorothy's well-being touched her heart deeply. "You know, Michael, sometimes we find family in the most unexpected places. You 3 have become my family too." "I know. but I still think you should have someone special just for you. That same week, in a coincidence Michael would probably call fate, Dorothy met Walter, a retired history teacher who frequented the same library as her. Walter had lost his wife 3 years earlier and had also dedicated his life to teaching. When Dorothy told Michael about Walter during a lesson, the boy was visibly excited. "He sounds cool. When are we going to meet him?" "Easy, Michael. We're still getting to know each other." "But do you like him?" Dorothy laughed at the boy's persistence. "I think so, sweetheart. He's a good man." "Then invite him over for dinner. Grandma Martha cooks really well, and Dad can bring a yummy dessert." Michael's idea of bringing Walter into the family from the start showed his natural understanding of how to build strong relationships. 3 months later, Walter had become a regular at family dinners. Michael had immediately adopted him as Grandpa Walter, and even Richard developed a genuine friendship with the history teacher. "Our family is getting really big," Michael remarked at one of the dinners. "Does that bother you?" Martha asked. "No, I love it. The more people to love me, the better." Richard looked around the table, Martha, Dorothy, Walter, Michael, and himself, and was moved by the transformation that had taken place in his life. "Michael," he said, "you know, when I started searching for you 9 years ago, I thought I'd find my son and bring him home with me." "I know. But that's not what happened. I didn't bring you home. You brought me into yours, into your family." Michael smiled. "That's because you needed a family too, Dad. Everyone does." The end. So, what did you think of Dorothy and Michael's story? Could you see how love can create bonds stronger than blood? Share in the comments which moment moved you the most, and don't forget to leave a like to support our channel. Subscribe so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.